The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect those of the ANA or its members. On today's episode of On Scope, ANA CEO Bob Liodice joins us to answer the age-old question, what the hell is going on in marketing? And in marketing news you may have missed, the gap between creative and media excellence is giving the Grand Canyon a run for its money. All that next on Scope. Everyone, welcome to On Scope, the marketing podcast. I am joined by the producer of On Scope, Ryan Dinger. Ryan, how you doing today, man?
I am doing fantastic. It's an exciting day. How are you?
Dude, I feel incredible because this is a very, very special day. It took months of hard work, scheming and dreaming, but we are here. It is the inaugural episode of On Scope, and could we have gotten a bigger guest to kick things off with?
I mean, you're talking the CEO of CEOs, our fearless leader, the one and only Bob Liodice. Come on.
The voice of the industry is here today, folks, and we are talking about a myriad of topics under the guise of what the hell is going on in marketing. I mean, we've got shortening CMO tenures. We've got an absolute mess in the measurement world. And we're going to learn why all is not forsaken. We're going to end with a little bit of hope. So don't worry, folks.
That's much needed, I feel like, right now.
Absolutely.
A little hope would do you good.
Absolutely, but I'm getting ahead of myself because right now we have marketing news you might have missed.
That's right, Mike. Marketing news you might have missed. I've got a story for you today that just so happens to be from ANA Magazine.
Love it.
I love it. You know, ANA Podcast, ANA Magazine article. We are aligned.
Yeah.
Here's the headline and the subheadline for you.
Hit me.
New report puts spotlight on the creative media gap. Most companies do not sync up their creative processes with distribution. Here's how the story starts, Mike. A new study reaffirms that marketers face significant challenges in breaking down silos within their organizations and aligning with other departments. According to the 2025 Advertising Outlook report released last Monday by Mediaocean, 86% of advertisers report a lack of synchronization between creative and media processes. The report, based on the responses of 700 marketing professionals, also found that just 14% of advertisers are fully synchronized in 2025, compared to just 12% in 2024, leaving ample room for improvement. Mike, your thoughts?
I mean, tale as old as time. Song as old as rhyme.
Mm-hmm.
We've got the beauty of creative and the digital beast that took over the marketing world, let's say 15, 20 years ago.
At least.
I've been hearing this since I entered into this industry. So that it is still...
Way back then, huh?
Yeah. Let's let's go whenever that happened to be.
Yeah, we don't need to share.
Let's call it not insignificant, okay? A not insignificant time ago, this was still the problem. So what in goodness' name, do we have any answers?
Well, so the report actually speculates on what the problem is. The report says, quote, the creative media gap is primarily caused by the industry's overemphasis on media at the expense of creative content. This disparity has a profound impact, especially in a world where consumers increasingly respond to and reward personalized experiences. Closing this gap represents the most significant growth opportunity for brands. That means a bigger opportunity than winning over multicultural audiences.
Yep.
A bigger opportunity than engaging Gen Alpha and Gen Z.
Yep.
This is the problem. If you need your brand to grow, you have to get your creative and your media distribution correct and aligned.
And you know what's like literally driving me crazy right now is for at least the past 5 years, probably 10 years, we've heard marketers be like, oh, we have to be data scientists now. Oh, we've got to be this. We've got to be business owners now. Oh, I've got to be a futurist now. This is media and creative. This has been in your remit since I was able to legally drink. And again, we're not going to put numbers on things, but this has been the case and your supposed superpower forever. Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty much the fundamentals of marketing right there. You know, it's like box 1 and box 2 when you get into marketing. So it's pretty insane. But Deborah Wall, the former global CMO at General Motors, she has what she believes is a potential solution. Would you care to hear it?
I would absolutely love to hear from Deborah.
So Deborah is quoted in the report as saying, quote, Generative AI is no longer a futuristic concept. It's a cornerstone of today's advertising strategies. The moment we're in reminds me of the electric vehicle transformation in the auto industry. To capitalize on the opportunity, nay, imperative, marketers had to reimagine their business strategies and marketing programs. The same goes for AI, and the brands that embrace it now will see outsized returns. Mike, your thoughts?
Listen, let me first say that Deborah is an absolute icon and who has done incredible things in this industry.
Yep. Goes without saying.
I'm going to respectfully disagree.
Mm.
I just, in 2025, saying that generative AI is a cornerstone of marketing strategy, and I don't want to put words into her mouth if that's not exactly what she said, but it's along those lines, that makes me feel really, really uneasy. And honestly, I have a different car analogy that this all reminds me of.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's the self-driving car. You know, I feel like 7, 8, 9, maybe even 10 years ago, we heard about how this was right around the corner and it was going to revolutionize things, and everybody got really excited about it. And we're still waiting on a commercially viable, consumer-ready product in 2025.
Yeah.
That's really how I'm looking at generative AI, at least in the general market sense. Listen, if you're company has all of the money to build its own custom generative AI closed database system, then version away, personalize away. But if you think ChatGPT 4 is going to be able to do that for you, I have really bad news. Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, I think the solution feels like it's ideal for, you know, if you're a brand or a company like General Motors where you have the budget and the resources to put into AI to do this type of thing. But that's really only a top 1 or 2% of businesses that are able to do that effectively. So I actually appreciate that we're starting with a little AI skepticism here, because while it can be a very valuable tool, it is not the be all end all, and it's not going to solve every single problem that's facing our industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, literally last week, I was on the phone with the entire marketing team at Lowe's. Shout out to Lowe's. Y'all guys were so much fun, giving them a primer on AI. And when we got to generative AI, I actually did a little homework assignment, a live homework assignment, so everybody can see what it's capable and not capable of. Generating an image, it can do some really, really cool things.
Right.
If you want that same image to then be versioned to have a little negative space in the top quadrant for text, good luck. That is about as basic as a design request as you can do. And I'm just telling you, generative AI cannot reliably do that at all. It can't reliably come within 10 miles of that. So really, it's important to know what your platforms can and can't do right now. Here's my take on it, if I may.
Yes, please.
I guess I got to get used to giving them.
That's what I'm paying you for.
Exactly. Hopefully this will get me a raise. I'm trying to be positive in 2025. That's one of my resolutions. So I encourage the industry to look at this challenge as an opportunity. Creativity is our superpower, guys. We were the ones to get on top of media before it got on anybody else's radar. I think, wouldn't you love the opportunity to be thinking more about creative excellence? And I think, listen, we've done a lot of separation. By the digital boom came along, got everybody excited. There was a chief digital officer. There were digital teams. There were entire teams built around a channel. Really think about that for a second. And we've really gone. That road forked 2 decades ago, and it's been the gap has been increasing ever since. So maybe we can't build a 4-lane highway to bridge those two, but I think through communication, which is, if we have 3 superpowers, creativity, media, and communication, I'd say would be those. Let's at least get a rope bridge up and start talking to each other and start closing that gap a little by little. 12 to 14% year over year.
Yeah.
We can do better than that as an industry. I am 100% confident.
Well, I'm inspired.
Well, good. That's what we're here to do. Thanks, Ryan. Good stuff. And I have a feeling we're going to have a lot of fun in this segment as we go on.
Me too, Mike.
And ladies and gentlemen, that is marketing news you might have missed. Now, get ready, because it's time for the interview with A&A CEO, Bob Liodice. Enjoy. The day is finally here. It is the inaugural episode of On Scope, the marketing podcast brought to you by the ANA. And who else on earth could we have here to kick off the show other than our fearless leader, the CEO of the ANA, Bob Liodice, is in the studio.
Hey, glad to be here, Michael and friends. Happy New Year to everybody. Let's kick it off with a great 2025 ahead of us.
I absolutely love that. This is just good vibes from the very beginning. Bob, so I don't think I'm going out on a limb by saying the last few years of marketing have seen a little bit of turmoil. Measurement is still a mess in a lot of organizations. The tenure of CMOs is getting shorter and shorter. We're handing over creative details to robots nowadays. What the hell is going on in marketing?
Mike, those problems and the challenges have existed for years, if not decades. A change is the undercurrent of what we do in our particular business. But where we are right now is a reflection of a couple of things that's gone on. First, we're still recovering from COVID. I know that sounds kind of strange, but the dynamics of our environment were completely turned on its head.
Yeah.
The products and services that we deliver are different, but more importantly, so are our consumers and our customers. And it begins and it ends with the fact that our target audiences have changed. They've changed because their tastes have changed, their behaviors have changed, their beliefs have changed. Now, why everything is so topsy-turvy is because we are still struggling with catching up with what those changes are. And those changes are influenced by a technologically based industry and an environment that is flipping everything on its head. So we do not necessarily have the best baseline available to us. So how do we get on top of this? Well, first of all, the two most important ingredients, in my opinion, are data and measurement. Now, everybody says, well, we're chock full of data. True. We are still learning how to harness that particular data so that marketers can have great insights in order to be able to make effective decisions. But that data needs to be integrated within a measurement framework that is understandable. And unfortunately, everything has been on such a fast track that we're constantly catching up. Go back 10, 15 years when digital and social media made its particular presence. That was an environment that moved us from analog to digital. And that change happened over a very, very long period that required marketers and consumers to get remarried. And what was going to be of great interest to those particular consumers? Well, it took us a long time to be able to catch up with that. And it took a long time to generate the expertise and capability as marketers to know how to be able to harness that power to best reach our consumer and customer target audiences. We're kind of in the same place where artificial intelligence has set the apple cart and is now resetting it in a way that we as marketers can be thinking in a highly productive, intelligent manner that allows us to make those better decisions. But if we take all of that, the recognition for marketers is be able to develop ongoing long-term brand loyalty by ensuring that every brand's unique selling proposition is clearly identified. That's what Basic Marketing 101 is all about, a unique selling proposition. How we deliver it, we have more options than we've ever imagined, number one. Number two, in delivering that unique selling proposition, it's critically important for us to know what works and what doesn't work with those respective audiences, to be able to weave those narratives together so that we can not only capture their attention, but ensure that we pursue pathways that keep them. Because in a highly technological way, keeping those competitive advantages are becoming increasingly difficult. So we have to stay ahead of that curve, and we need to let technology be our friend and not let our competitors work against us.
Bob, I feel like you just set up the first year of this podcast. No, but it's really, you touched on some incredible stuff there. And I remember now thinking back in the second half of 2020, hearing people just kind of pithily say like, yeah, all of our 3-year plans got pushed through a 2-week window. And it was true. And we just kind of went on, but that's a body shock.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It was.
And so, yeah, I do really think that we were trying to keep up with the remote mobile everybody out there thing, and then AI came in and just took everybody's lunch.
That's true.
So yeah, it's a balancing act, it's an orchestration act, and I'm kind of proud to be one of the organizations that helping the industry as a whole.
That's what makes our job fun.
Indeed. And actually on that point, part of the ANA's mission is to elevate the marketing industry as a whole.
Right.
How do we effectively do that based on the natural competitiveness of businesses? You know what I mean? You get the secret sauce, you kind of want to keep it close to the vest, but there is a value to everybody. The high tide literally does raise all ships.
Sure.
How do we strike that balance, Bob?
Yeah, it's the billion-dollar question, to say the least. Let's break down the marketing industry into 3 basic parts. It's essentially the media, which includes broadcasters and platforms. It's the agency, which kind of act as intermediaries, along with the ad tech community. And of course, it all begins with the brands and the marketers. Mm-hmm. So if we establish that as the framework for how we're thinking about it, everybody has their own specific goals and objectives. And unfortunately, they're not necessarily meshed together. Mm-hmm. So the ad tech community has different goals than the platforms, which is different goals from the agencies and the marketers. What is imperative as an industry, and what the ANA is trying to foster, is the interconnection of those objectives so that there is greater degrees of harmony than ever before among those 3 primary particular platforms. If we do that, then there is an opportunity to worry less about competition and worry more about adding more value.
Yes.
But importantly, that it be done through the lens of the marketer. Why do I emphasize that? Well, when you think about it, if brand marketers win, the entire industry wins. Why? Because 99% of non-marketer revenue is sourced from the marketers. And if you start with that, you want to create a rising tide where brands are successful, there's more financial resources generated, and those revenues then get pushed out to the agencies, the platforms, the broadcasters, etc. We all win together. But it's incumbent upon the marketers to step back and say, what do we want as marketers? Mm-hmm. And when we think in that holistic way, we need to be able to push out that agenda to the non-marketer part of that supply chain that allows everybody to understand what we're trying to achieve collaboratively, because the powerful forces that exist among agencies and media companies and marketers will raise the tide, will ensure that we are all working with the same resources that provide a win-win-win. Mm-hmm. It's not you versus me. It's all of us working together. Now, the ANA is attempting to do that through a very unique organization called its Global CMO Growth Council. Mm-hmm. We have been at this for several years now. And in that championship of their agenda, we are attempting to bring greater degrees of harmony among those particular platforms. Our goal is to set the agenda. Our goal with them is to get them to understand it, to embrace it, and figure out who is going to contribute that will allow us to be able to develop that harmony to create that win-win-win.
That's so awesome. And as you were laying it out, it kind of occurred to me, if we can get the playing field up here where your tech problems aren't really plaguing you and the consumer privacy thing is settled, right, and a lot of those things, and we're left to compete on the distinct value of your brand and the creativity of your organization and its partners, isn't that something every marketer would love to get back to?
That's nirvana. I mean, it's kind of back to where we were in the Mad Men days.
Yeah.
But technology has complicated that.
Absolutely.
What it has done is it has empowered many parts of that overall supply chain to become better.
Mm-hmm.
But becoming better has not been done in an aligned way, because it's what you think is right versus what I think is right versus what they think is right.
Right.
And unfortunately, what that's happened, well, it's had a two-pronged effect. On the good side is it's created a lot of innovation and a lot of capability that we all struggled for back 15, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But on the negative side, it has created transparency issues. And that level of a lack of clarity has essentially hampered us. Why? Well, you got walled gardens that don't necessarily share all of the data that we want them to share. You've got measurement companies that do not provide the kind of harmony that allow us to truly understand whether we're being successful or not. There's a lot of self-interest that are taking place. We've seen it through the various studies that we've created on retail media, on principal media, on programmatic media, where there are lots of transparency issues that prevent us from making the most effective decisions. And not to try to blame it on the downstream part of the supply chain, the marketers need to be in control. And they've not necessarily taken that.
Yep.
Why? Because everybody's worrying about their own businesses and their brands. What we have to do at the ANA is to continue to foster that greater degrees of harmony through the Global Growth Council and through our respective partnerships with the agencies and the media companies, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think you touched on something there, and I think that the GGC, the Global Growth Council, really helps imbue a higher sense of confidence in marketing leaders.
Yeah.
When you're not confident, you're looking for the easy answer. You're much more liable to fall down a rabbit hole that you shouldn't be sniffing around. So I think that getting that education, getting that collaboration, imbues that confidence to walk into a room with an agency partner or a vendor and saying, this is what I want,
Right.
and I'm not asking. Just very powerful stuff.
Well, let's deconstruct that a little
Please.
bit. There is kind of a we-they among marketers. If you look at the top 100 or so marketers, they pretty much have the resources to do all of that.
Yeah.
They can buy their own talent. They can hire agencies. They can get consultants. They can essentially look at this high-tech arena that we call the marketing industry and figure out how best to navigate it. The problem is when you get beyond those very large companies and you get into the small and medium business size segment where resources are more constrained, they don't necessarily have the ability to truly see the wide lens of opportunities. And they're all struggling for survival. They're competing in hand-to-hand combat in many instances. And as such, they cannot necessarily get on top of all of the technological evolution that's taken place to provide that level of success. Small companies want to be big companies, and big companies want to act like small companies. So it's imperative that the ANA continue to work to find the pathways necessary to meet those particular needs. And that's what we try to do, is to democratize the information that's out there and ensure that small, medium-sized businesses have the same degrees of opportunities that the large-sized businesses do.
That's fantastic. I love it. Bob, I want to go back just for a moment to Masters of Marketing 2024, which was just an incredible event. My mind is now in Orlando, so give me a second. But on stage, you quoted Richard Haig of Brand Finance as saying, a business's brand is one of its most important financial assets. Strong brands can unlock vast financial value for businesses and stakeholders. Now, how do we marketers champion brand value and long-term brand building internally when all of their peers at the C-suite are seemingly fixated on the quarterly returns?
The age-old issue that will plague us. But I think we're starting to wake up. But let's backtrack a little bit. Marketers in their own right should know this, because they are called upon to be able to generate value for the company through building their businesses through their brands. The brand is the main asset of a company. You don't have to be Coca-Cola to know that the power of their own growth is channeled through the brand. There are tons of empirical studies that say strong and powerful brands drive shareholder returns. That's what the CEO and the CFO want. Now, the hard question is how do CMOs effectuate that particular level of growth?
Mm-hmm.
We've kind of touched on it a little bit in terms of making sure that that unique selling proposition has the potential to drive that long-term brand success, but to perform in the short term. So there's a balancing act. That's why you'll see in a lot of reading material to not only focus in on the brands, but to focus in on performance marketing. That gives you the balance between short term and long term. If you can parse your way through that and understand what those key levers are, you can achieve that balance.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, especially when times get more challenging, we tend to forego the investments in the long-term brand building aspect and channel them into the short-term performance areas. Now, we've been in pretty good, decent economic shape over the past couple of years. We've seen pockets of our industry grow pretty well because we have found that right balance.
Mm-hmm.
But we often lose our way. One, sometimes that brand growth isn't necessarily significant enough. And what happens? CMOs get displaced and you're starting all over again.
Yep.
And you're starting with essentially an environment that wants to reinvent the wheel, bring in new agencies, try on different media forms,
Get your
etc.
flag in there, yeah.
That does more harm than good. One of the things about marketing is that we have to be in it for the long term because many of the things that we deploy have a long-term effect that creates a standard of expectations by the consumers. If consumers get to understand and know you, there's a greater opportunity to be brand loyal. That's the long-term effect. But if we keep changing things very, very rapidly, the loyalty is not going to be there because the expectations that are communicated through the various media forms that we have are consistently evolving, and there's no sense of where my friendship with the brand is. So that is why it's important that not only do we succeed reasonably in reasonably quick time, but that we do it with a level of intelligence that really better understands the consumer. And that goes back to the data and measurement issues that I was talking about before.
Yes, and we are going to go deep diving on that in
Sure.
just a little bit. But it's so true, and the brand is the foundation of everything else you do in marketing. And in a lot of conversations I've been having lately, people have been telling me, if a brand moves away from really driving that brand value home for a few years, and then performance marketing starts to dry up a little bit, going back home is not as easy as you think. You can't just start from where you were when you decided to stop investing in brands. That has deteriorated as you've gone elsewhere looking for that quick turnaround.
Right.
So it's really much more than a nice to have.
Right.
It really is the settlement that your home is on.
Well, let me just back that up with something that marketers don't do. It is critically important, in my opinion, to be a successful marketer, that you better understand the economic value of your brand.
Yes.
Now, there are a lot of deaf ears to that because it's hard to measure that. Now, there are a lot of sophisticated financial techniques that will allow you to measure that. But a lot of us in the brand marketer community are afraid of that because it is not something that is as tangible as revenue generation or income generation.
100%.
It's not something that marketers have practiced on a regular basis. But I do think that there has to be a substantial level of rigor that's applied to how we value our brand and our respective marketing programs impact on that economic value of brand over the course of time. You've seen listings from Interbrand, Kantar, Brand Z. Well, those are very, very meaningful evaluation systems that can, in fact, deconstruct that economic value of a brand. If marketers were able to pay more attention to that and to discipline themselves to make their objective the growth of the economic value of the brand, I think we'd have a better degree of discipline.
I absolutely love it. Extremely well said. Folks, stick around because when we come back, we are talking AI. I am here with Ryan Dinger, producer of On Scope. Ryan, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please do.
Are you familiar with the ANA?
The ANA? No, I've never heard of that. What is it?
Desperately hoping you'd say that. So the ANA, get this, empowers marketers to drive growth and set the course for the future. Does that sound like something you'd like to do?
I have to be honest. I've been talking about setting a course for the future for a long time. I think this is now the time to do it.
Yeah, I know. You're mostly talking to me about it.
It's been a problem.
Yeah. So get this. Guided by our CMO community, we're accelerating success for brands and marketers by addressing challenges and delivering game-changing insights to make better decisions. And goodness gracious, couldn't we all use a little help to make better decisions?
Something I've been saying to all my marketer friends is you guys need to make better decisions. What the heck are you doing out there?
Truly, get help. Probably through the ANA. Together, we here and our members are shaping marketing's evolution. You got to get in on this. To join the movement and see what's new, visit ana.net. Brian, I got to tell you, there are people listening to this who probably don't even know they're ANA members.
Wow. Can you imagine that?
I couldn't imagine that. But if that's the case, if you already have access to events, training, conferences, leadership at no cost, visit ana.net and use your work email to see if you're already part of the club.
I'm going to do that right now.
Please do. And now, back to the show. We are back with ANA CEO Bob Liodice on the first episode of On Scope. Bob, let's address the 600-pound mechanical gorilla in the room. If I didn't talk about AI on this episode, I think people would question my sanity a little bit. It's been absolutely the buzz for now going on 2 years plus.
Right.
How would you recommend marketers approach AI in a strategic, responsible way? Easy question. Super easy.
Yeah.
Made it.
I think the first answer is, do we really understand AI? Like any new technology, it takes time to understand the potential of it, number one. And number two, to ensure that everybody in your organization really understands its power and potential by trying it on, applying it, playing with it. AI has such enormous potential. I mean, I've seen quotes from some of the most senior technology-based leaders that are out there saying that this is the biggest invention since the wheel. There is no doubt about its power and potential. And what is kind of wonderfully scary is that it continues to evolve. Every day you hear about a new application. Every day you hear about the ability to do even more with less. So, I mean, I kind of break this down into a couple of areas. First is pure productivity. Theoretically, how do you use your resources better? By leveraging AI. That has already generated anywhere from a 7 to 10% increase in the 2.5 years that you mentioned. The creativity component as well. There are so many applications to be able to think broader, deeper, three-dimensionally by leveraging AI to provide that wealth of ideas that open up the consideration lanes for brand builders or just anybody in particular. But then it's how do we harness ourselves to ensure that we're leveraging AI to make the best decisions. Now, in the earliest days, 2.5 years ago, there were a lot of stumbles and bumbles. I mean, people were applying AI without really understanding whether it could work. And there are a lot of embarrassing stories out there. But you don't hear that many embarrassing stories anymore, which means that more people are using it. They're using it with greater degrees of discipline. And it's not hard.
Right.
I mean, let's face it. When we went from pencils to PCs, that was kind of hard because we were introducing a whole different level of complexity to the average individual that didn't necessarily understand how to turn on the computer.
Yeah.
Now, leveraging AI is kind of almost second nature. If you're not using it, then in fact, you're really underselling yourself. So it's critically important to get more and more of our people to just play with it. We in the A&A,
Absolutely.
it has become part of our performance agreements is that you need to play with it. You need to figure it out. You need to find ways to make our jobs better, more productive, more capable, etc. I don't think it's any more sophisticated than that. Why? Because what we've seen out of AI is that the technology continues to change at such a rapid rate that just as you're catching up, the next wave of innovation is coming. But it isn't incremental innovation. It is truly dynamic, breakthrough leaps and bounds that are taking place. So I would say that for the next few years, we have to get caught up with the fact or set the expectations that we are constantly going to be chasing after it.
Yes.
But as we get more confident, use that word before, as we get more confident, those gains will be materially felt by all marketers, by all consumers, and I do think that we're going to be in a better place. I will suggest one thing, and I kind of alluded to this before. Technology doesn't mean that you're going to win.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that thinks that they become AI pros, that's going to lead to your personal or corporate success is badly mistaken.
Yeah.
It still boils down to your ability to create brand loyalty through a unique selling proposition. Because any advantage that you may think you gained will be swept away in a gnat's eye.
Yes, absolutely. Bob, as part of the Marketing Futures team here at the A&A, I often am in situations where I'm helping, my colleagues or even A&A members wrap their heads around AI. And the very first thing I like to get out is AI is a tool. And if you're thinking about it as anything other than a tool, you've lost the plot before you've begun to read the story.
Yep.
I like to give a homework assignment for anybody trying, who wants to understand generative AI a little better. Mm-hmm. And the first two things I want you to understand is what it can do and what it can't do. And I think that contextualizing helps marketers from getting disillusioned or disappointed in it. It's not a set it and forget it thing, and it probably won't be for 10 years. But if you're treating it like a research assistant, or you're treating it like a first draft generator or a sounding board, there are incredible ways, like you said, focus on that productivity right now, because you're going to A, get value, and B, in that journey, figure out what AI is all about today.
So what can it do? So let me flip it back to you.
Okay, so one of my favorite things about generative AI is giving it a small, curated database to work on.
Okay.
So in one of the hats I wear here at the A&A, we create POV videos, 3 to 5 minute talking head videos where, it's kind of punditry on a subject. I'm the future of marketing guy. I wrote the first, let's say, 12 scripts. Wrote them by hand, all me. One day, as I was kind of getting into my generative AI journey, I fed all 12 scripts. Just my IP, there's nothing in there. I get consent to ChatGPT to read all of my scripts. Fed it 12 scripts. And I said, based on just that, I don't want you to go anywhere else in the internet, but just the things I just gave you. I want you to write my next script in my voice with my format. Here's the title. Bob, when I say the first draft was 75% of the way there.
Wow.
I mean,
that's good.
It was, and what did it do? It allowed me to imbue my personality and allowed me, for my 3 hot takes on the subject, to just get it right in the way there. Like, it did the base work for me.
Sure.
Now, if I took that script, printed it, and read it in front of a camera, I think people would be doing mental wellness checks on it. So that's where I kind of learned that it can do tremendous things, but it always needs you to take it across the finish line.
Well said.
So that's been just one of many ways that generative AI has really helped, really powered that to be more prolific. It wasn't like, oh, okay, I'm taking off early. It's like, we can do more of these videos now if I can get a
Yeah.
little help to get it started.
There's your productivity element.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So really, really good stuff.
Good.
Bob, we've mentioned it a couple of times now. I really wanted to take center stage. One of the challenges facing marketing is accurate measurement, especially across different media platforms,
Right.
as we've touched on. Last year, the ANA launched a program that aims to tackle this challenge of cross-media measurement, Aquila. Can you talk a little bit about the program and the effect that you hope it has on our industry?
Yeah. Measurement is a ridiculously complicated area. If you think about marketing as very three-dimensional, we try to apply a two-dimensional exercise called measurement. And sometimes it's a square peg in a round hole kind of situation. The problem is that we don't always have all of the data that we need to effectively measure, number one. Number two, there are parochial interests because there are different types of measurement companies that have different objectives among themselves. And number three, there is a lack of sophistication among marketers about how to effectively measure. So we have a number of things that kind of hold us back to be an effective measurer. And one of those things is what we call cross-media measurement. Now, we always call cross-media measurement the Holy Grail. And it's complicated because what you're trying to do is to look at all of the media that you channel your marketing through and to be able to distill it to say in an unduplicated reach and frequency aspect, how did my marketing perform? We've never been able to do that.
Ever.
And that is what we are now attempting to do. Aquila is part of we'll call it a joint venture among the WFA, which is the World Federation of Advertisers, and ISBA, which is the International Society of British Advertisers. And we have been approaching this from a high technology arena where we've had to create a very complex technical blueprint and then had to work with partners at Kantar and Accenture to be able to deconstruct data streams from testing it out first on broadcasting and through digital marketing. Take those data streams and weave them together to deduplicate all of the impression information that comes from that and come out with the answer for a specific brand on how well it performed. Well, we've been over 3 years into the burn on this, and we're getting very, very close to being there. So we are going into what's called beta later this year, which is essentially a test market for all practical purposes, which builds on the work of ISBA, which is somewhat ahead of us in some of their deployment. And we're going to weave our collective learnings together to eventually get to a national launch, which we anticipated to being early or middle part of 2026. So from what has been a pipe dream many, many years ago, when we started to conceive of this dream has been in place since 2008. So in reality, it's taken us about 16, 17 years to get to where we are. But it's been really come together in the last few, A, because of technology, B, because we've taken a holistic global perspective, C, we've had great partnership in organizations like Google, Meta, Amazon, TikTok, who have all played contributing engineers, contributing technological expertise to go through this massive deduplication process that will allow us to work through what is well understood as being a household panel data, 5,000 when we're all said and done. This is one of the first new panels that we've had in many, many years. And then to go through a reporting and analysis mechanism that Accenture will bring to us. I know I've said a lot. It's probably a blur to many people. But what I can do is to provide a lot of comfort that, A, we know what we're doing. B, we have a lot of people to help us. And then C, it's essentially brand ready.
Oh, that is incredible.
Yeah.
Bob, I remember hearing whispers about this a few years ago as it was just kind of gaining steam. And I was so floored with excitement about what this could mean for brands. The 2D3 thing is a perfect analogy. You are taking that metrics and putting it into the world of what actually happened and with actual consumers who made actual choices. And it's funny that you brought up the fact that we've been, as an industry and as an organization, thinking about this for over 15 years.
Yeah.
I worked at a digital agency before I came to the ANA 11 years ago. And this is exactly what I was working on before we left. Attribution across multiple channels and what the true thing was. And, it's so exciting to see. I just feel we're in a unique position to do something like this. And it's very exciting for me to see us use our power and our connections and our community to do something that could be a game changer.
Well, you talked about before about how to bring the industry together.
Mm-hmm.
The ANA couldn't have done this alone with just its brand marketing community. It required the ability to weave together great consultancies, great technology companies, other brand marketers, agency help. This is what an industry agenda looks like, where everybody has a great degree of harmony because we're all going to win together.
I love it, man. I love it. And honestly, this is perfect. This is the perfect vibe to go out on because we have discussed a myriad of issues facing our industry. There are a lot of obstacles ahead, issues to overcome. But I'd like to finish by shifting gears a little.
Sure.
What has you excited about the future of marketing?
That's a $1 trillion question.
What's one thing?
Let's start off with the fact that marketing was not always a respected function. And it was not respected because, hey, when I was growing up in marketing, you were winging it.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't a lot of science. It was very artsy, but not a lot of science.
Yeah.
I think what the past few years have given us the discipline to appreciate the fact that we are becoming more scientific. We still have a ways to go, but the reality is that this is what marketers want. In fact, in a survey that we did among our members last year, the overwhelming consensus was that marketers need to focus in on data, technology, measurement, and media. 20 years ago, it was brands and creativity.
Absolutely.
Not to say that those aren't important. They are. But the reality is that marketers know where their deficiencies are. And they know that success is only going to be generated by the harnessing of those data, tech, measurement, and media areas by applying that level of discipline to a very strong foundation in brand and creative, which will essentially provide an intersectionality of opportunity and success. And I really do believe as we begin 2025 is we can see a future where marketing does harness those disciplines, does create the opportunity for even the CFO to finally understand what it is that we do and the value that we bring, and to, in that vein, be willing to invest because we do, as we said before, strong brands equals strong results and bring shareholder value. If we can harness it in such a way that brings confidence to the CFO and CEOs that they can generate that shareholder value, then we can truly elevate marketing as a discipline which is on par with others within a respective corporate function.
Bob, I knew I was in for a good conversation today. This has exceeded all expectations. Thank you so much for being the very first guest.
Oh, it's been fun.
On Scope.
A lot of fun. Thank you. Let's have a great 2025.
If you insist.
I do.
And there we have it, folks. The inaugural episode of On Scope, the marketing podcast, is in the books. I'd like to thank Bob Liodice for being an amazing guest. Really wouldn't have wanted to kick this show off with anybody else. So thanks for coming through and sharing a lot of key insights for marketers to think about as we go into 2025 and beyond. And since this is our very first episode, I wanted to take this opportunity to thank everybody behind the scenes who helped out and supported us, because without your help and support, this just wouldn't have been possible. So big shout out to A&A's production team of Rick Connect, Warren Pulowski, and Adam Somer. You guys are really the magic behind all of this, so we really appreciate it. A shout out to our incredible editorial team who helped us wrangle some of the biggest and best names in the industry: Matthew Schwartz, Dominic Filzami, and Liz Kneebone. Thank you so much for your help and support. And last but not least, my partner in crime, the producer of On Scope, the marketing podcast, Ryan Dinger. Thanks, buddy. Really appreciate it. Now, every episode of On Scope is going to end with a little moment of marketing meditation. And while we're on this theme of thankfulness, I wanted to continue that through this very first moment with you. I'm going to share a quote from author Melody Beattie. Gratitude unlocks the fullness of life. Think on that, and I'll see you next week.